The Ship of Fools. Episode 100. The Shadow Quest Sting. Fleet Station. Helios 9 floated above the swirling amber rings of Saturn like a chandelier suspended in the void. Its observation decks glowed with warm gold light, and the officers' lounge, a circular chamber lined with velvet drapes and polished brass, hummed with quiet tension. Saturn stud poker was the kind of game that made reputations, destroyed careers, and occasionally changed the fate of entire starships. Tonight, it threatened to change the fate of the Shadow Quest. Commander Christopher Banning sat at the center table, his posture relaxed, his expression unreadable. But beneath the calm exterior, something colder churned, a razor-sharp focus that made his crew uneasy. Snipes, Moxie, and Aurora stood behind him, watching the game unfold with growing dread. Across from Banning sat 4 fleet officers whose uniforms were immaculate and whose reputations were whispered about in the darker corners of the academy. Commodore Tobias, the ringleader, a man with a smile like a polished knife. Captain Quine, broad-shouldered, humorless, and fond of intimidation. Commander Gordon, a strategist with a predator's patience. Lieutenant Fillmore, quiet, observant, and dangerous, precisely because he never spoke. The dealer slid the final card across the table. Banning lifted his hand. A king high straight, not unbeatable, but strong. Tobias lifted his own cards with theatrical slowness. A flush, higher. Banning's jaw tightened by a fraction, the only sign he'd lost. Snipes whispered, "Commander, that's impossible." "The odds," Aurora whispered back. "The odds were manipulated." Tobias leaned forward, savoring the moment. "Commander Banning, as per the wager, the Shadow Quest is now under my control. You have 24 hours to vacate and hand the ship over to its new crew." Moxie's fists clenched. Snipes looked sick. Aurora dimmed in quiet fury. Banning simply nodded. Cold, calm, dangerous. "Very well," he said. "Enjoy your victory while it lasts, Commodore." He stood, turned to his crew, and walked out without another word. Behind him, Tobias smirked. He had no idea he'd just been marked. The walk back to the Shadow Quest felt longer than any march Banning had ever taken. The corridors of Helios 9 curved in elegant arcs of polished steel and amber glass, but tonight they felt like the inside of a coffin. Officers passed him with curious glances, unaware that the ship he commanded, the ship he had bled for, fought for, nearly died for, had just been gambled away in a rigged game. Snipes trailed behind him, wringing his hands. "Commander, I know you're being all stoic and mysterious, but I feel like I'm going to throw up." Moxie's boots struck the deck like hammer blows. "I'm not throwing up. I'm throwing hands on Tobias, on all of them." Aurora flickered beside Banning, her hologram unusually dim. "Commander, I have analyzed the game logs. The probability of Tobias's winning hand occurring naturally was less than 1 in 8 million. A scan of the players' anatomies showed they used cybernetic vision enhancers to cheat." Banning didn't slow. "I know. I figured that out during the game." Aurora hesitated. "You are so calm." "Very," he said. Moxie narrowed her eyes. "Too calm." Snipes whispered, "He's doing that thing. That scary thing he does." They reached the docking bay. The Shadow Quest waited in the center of the cavernous chamber, its hull reflecting the station lights like a predator's eye. Even at rest, the ship radiated a quiet menace, a reminder of the alternate timeline it came from, where survival had required impossible upgrades and desperate innovation. Banning stopped at the foot of the boarding ramp and finally turned to face his crew. His voice was low, controlled, and colder than the vacuum outside. "They cheated us," he said. "They think they've won. They think we're going to hand over the Shadow Quest like obedient little officers." Snipes swallowed. "We're not doing that, right?" Banning's eyes hardened. No, we're not. Aurora straightened, her hologram sharpening. Commander, do you intend to retaliate? No, Banning said. Retaliation is emotional. This is not emotional. Moxie crossed her arms. Then what is it? Banning stepped onto the ramp, the lights casting long shadows behind him. Justice. The word hung in the air like a blade. Inside the ship, the familiar hum of the engines greeted them, a sound that felt like home. The crew followed Banning to the briefing room, where the star field outside the panoramic window glittered like scattered diamonds. Banning stood at the head of the table. We have 24 hours, he said, and we're going to use every second. Snipes raised a hand. To do what? Banning's expression didn't change. To steal our ship back. We're going to arrange a sting. Aurora's eyes glowed. Commander, I am ready. Moxie cracked her knuckles. Let's sting these bastards. Banning nodded once. Good, because the game they rigged? That was just the opening move. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper. Now we play ours. The briefing room lights dimmed as Aurora activated the holotable. A three-dimensional star map blossomed into existence, casting shifting constellations across the walls. The glow reflected in Banning's eyes, but his expression remained unreadable, a mask of calm calculation that made even Moxie hesitate before speaking. So, she said, leaning forward, what's the plan? We storm their quarters? We break into their accounts? We throw Tobias out an airlock and call it a day? Snipes raised a hand. I vote for the airlock. Aurora flickered. Violence is statistically inefficient. Moxie scoffed. It's emotionally efficient. Banning finally spoke, his voice low and controlled. We're not going to fight them. We're going to beat them at their own game. Snipes blinked. Poker? No, Banning said. Cheating. Aurora's hologram sharpened. Commander, I am listening. Banning stepped closer to the holotable. Tobias and his officers think they've already won. They think we're desperate. They think we're emotional. They think we're predictable. Moxie smirked. They're wrong on all counts. Exactly, Banning said. So we give them something they can't resist, something that appeals to their arrogance, something that lets them believe they're still in control. Snipes snapped his fingers. A race. Aurora nodded. A multi-system race. High stakes. High visibility. High opportunity for sabotage. Banning's eyes narrowed. And that's exactly what they'll do. The holotable shifted, displaying a chain of star systems connected by warp corridors, a glittering path through the galaxy. Aurora narrated as the map rotated. The race route spans 6 systems: Helios, Tyrellian, Castara, the Ionis Rift, the Targus Expanse, and finally the finish line at the Vega Beacon. Snipes whistled. That's a lot of places to die. Moxie frowned. Or a lot of places to set traps. Aurora continued. The corrupt officers will assume their ships are superior. They will also assume the Shadow Quest is the same ship they've studied in fleet records. Snipes grinned. But it's not. No, Aurora said. This Shadow Quest is from an alternate timeline. It possesses capabilities they cannot predict. Banning folded his arms. And we're going to use those capabilities to make them expose themselves. Moxie raised an eyebrow. Expose themselves how? Aurora's eyes glowed. By cheating, by sabotaging the race, by hiring pirate mercenaries, by broadcasting their crimes on unsecured channels. Snipes gasped. They're that stupid? Aurora nodded. Statistically, yes. Banning leaned over the table, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than a shout. We're going to let them cheat. We're going to let them sabotage us. We're going to let them think they've trapped us. Moxie grinned. And then? Banning's expression didn't change. And then we spring the trap. Aurora projected a final hologram, Admiral Garrick's insignia. When the evidence is overwhelming, Aurora said, Fleet Command will have no choice but to intervene. Snipes rubbed his hands together. So we're not just winning the ship back. We're taking them down. Banning nodded once. Exactly. The holotable dimmed, leaving the room bathed in the soft glow of the stars outside. Moxie stood. When do we start? Banning turned toward the bridge, his voice calm and lethal. Now. The next morning, Fleet Station Helios 9 hummed with its usual rhythm. Officers moving in crisp lines, shuttles drifting in and out of the docking bays, the distant glow of Saturn's rings casting soft amber light through the station's panoramic windows. But beneath the surface, tension rippled like a current. Rumors had already begun to spread. Commander Banning had lost his ship. The Shadow Quest, the infamous anomaly from another timeline, was about to change hands. Commodore Tobias basked in the attention. He stood in the station's command hall, surrounded by officers eager to congratulate him on his victory. His smile was polished, his posture immaculate, his ego swollen to the size of a small moon. He didn't notice the Shadow Quest crew enter until the room fell silent. Banning walked at the front, his expression unreadable, his movements precise and controlled. Snipes followed, trying to look confident and failing spectacularly. Moxie stalked behind them like a storm cloud with fists. Aurora flickered beside Banning, her hologram crisp and steady. Tobias's smile widened. Commander Banning, come to surrender your ship early? Banning stopped a few feet away, hands clasped behind his back. His voice was calm, almost gentle, which somehow made it more threatening. No, he said. I'm here to offer you a chance to win something real. Tobias raised an eyebrow. Real? Commander, I already won your ship. You won a card game, Banning said. Barely. A murmur rippled through the room. Tobias's smile tightened. Are you implying something? I'm stating something, Banning replied. You won the Shadow Quest in a rigged game, but you haven't proven anything. Not skill, not superiority, not command. Moxie smirked. Snipes tried not to laugh. Aurora's eyes glowed faintly. Tobias stepped closer. And what do you propose? Banning nodded to Aurora. She activated a holo projector. A star map unfolded in the air, 6 systems connected by warp corridors, glowing like a constellation of challenges. A race, Banning said, across multiple star systems, through warp corridors, nebulae, asteroid fields, and the Ionis Rift. A test of speed, strategy, and command. Tobias studied the map, intrigued despite himself. And the stakes? Banning's voice remained steady. Our savings, our pensions, and what's left of Moxie's lottery winnings. Moxie muttered. I really hate you, Banning. Tobias chuckled. And what do we wager? We already have your ship. Banning stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to make Tobias lean in. You wager your reputations. Tobias blinked. Explain. If you win, Banning said, you keep the Shadow Quest and take the pot. You walk away as the officers who beat the fastest ship in the fleet. And if you win? Tobias asked. Banning's eyes hardened. Then you return the Shadow Quest, and you admit, publicly, that you cheated. The room went still. Tobias stared at him, searching for weakness, fear, hesitation. He found none. Banning was ice, cold, calm, dangerous. Tobias laughed. You're insane. Possibly, Banning said, but you're afraid. Tobias bristled. I am not afraid of you. Then race us, Banning said. Unless you think your ships can't keep up. That did it. Tobias's pride snapped like a tripwire. Fine, he said. We accept. Aurora flickered. The race begins at 900. Route data will be transmitted to all participants. Tobias smirked. Prepare to lose again, Commander. Banning turned away. We'll see. As the crew walked out, Snipes whispered, Commander. That was terrifying. Moxie nodded. I've never been more proud. Aurora's voice was soft. The bait has been taken. Banning didn't smile. The shady officers didn't waste a moment. Within an hour of accepting the race, Commodore Tobias and his associates retreated to a private strategy chamber deep within Helios 9, a room lined with sound-dampening panels and shielded from fleet surveillance, or so they believed. Aurora's micro-drones, no larger than dust motes, drifted through the ventilation system and settled silently in the corners. Their lenses glowed faintly, invisible to the naked eye. Inside, Tobias paced like a man rehearsing a victory speech. Banning thinks he can embarrass us, he said. He thinks this race is about honor. He's an idiot. Commander Gordon folded his arms. He's desperate. That makes him predictable. Lieutenant Fillmore tapped a control panel, bringing up a hologram of the race route. We have 6 systems to work with. Plenty of opportunities to intervene. Captain Quine sneered. I say we hit them early. Disable their engines in the Tyrellian corridor. Make it look like a systems failure. Tobias shook his head. Too obvious. We need deniability. Gordon smirked. Then we outsource. Fillmore pressed another control. A new hologram appeared. A jagged, rust-colored ship with a skull-like prow and mismatched engines that pulsed like diseased organs. The Blood Scythe, a pirate mercenary vessel infamous across 3 sectors. Quine grinned. Now that's more like it. Tobias clasped his hands behind his back. The Blood Scythe will intercept the Shadow Quest in the Kastara system, disable their warp drive, force them to drop out of the race. If they resist, he shrugged. Accidents happen. Gordon added, and if the pirates fail, we have backup. The Ionis Rift is a perfect place for a navigation error. Fillmore nodded. We'll plant false beacons, lead them straight into the plasma storms. Tobias smiled. Excellent. And once the Shadow Quest is destroyed, we'll claim Banning panicked and push the ship beyond its limits. Quine laughed. Fleet Command will believe it. Everyone knows that ship is unstable. Tobias leaned forward, lowering his voice. And once the Shadow Quest is gone, we'll sell the wreckage to the Syndicate. They've been wanting a piece of that timeline-altered tech for years. The officers laughed. They didn't know Aurora was listening. Back aboard the Shadow Quest, Aurora's hologram flickered into existence above the briefing table, her expression sharper than usual. They have hired pirate mercenaries, she said. The Blood Scythe will intercept us in the Kastara system. Snipes paled. The Blood Scythe? The ship with the skull on the front? The one that eats other ships? Moxie smirked. Let them try. Aurora continued. They also intend to sabotage our navigation in the Ionis Rift. They will plant false beacons to lure us into plasma storms. Banning didn't react. He simply folded his arms, absorbing the information with the same calm precision he'd shown since the game. Good, he said. Snipes blinked. Good. Commander, they're trying to kill us. Yes, Banning said. And they're going to boast about it. Aurora nodded. I have already recorded their conversation. Admiral Garrick is receiving the data in real time. Moxie grinned. So the trap is already sprung. Not yet, Banning said. We need them to commit. We need them to believe they've beaten us. We need them to act without restraint. Snipes raised a hand. So, we let the pirates attack us? Banning turned to him, eyes cold. We let them think they're attacking us. Aurora's eyes glowed. I will prepare the decoy signatures. Moxie smirked. And I'll prepare the real weapons. Banning nodded once. Good, because when the blood scythe arrives... He stepped toward the viewport, watching the stars drift past like silent witnesses. We're going to show them what the Shadow Quest really is. At precisely 0900 hours, the starting beacon ignited above Helios 9, casting a brilliant white flare across the void. The participating ships, a dozen sleek cruisers, interceptors, and the crooked officer's flagship Vanquish, aligned themselves in a staggered formation. Their hulls gleamed under the station's lights, engines rumbling with anticipation. The Shadow Quest eased into position at the end of the line, its gleaming golden hull catching the light and shimmering brilliantly, a radiant vessel against the darkness. Snipes sat at the engineering console, bouncing nervously. Okay. Engines are primed, warp coils are humming, and the ship is definitely not going to explode. Probably. Moxie strapped into the tactical chair. If it does explode, I'm haunting you. Aurora flickered above the holotable. All systems are nominal. Cloaking matrix is on standby. Decoy signatures are ready. Banning stood at the helm, hands resting lightly on the controls. His expression was calm, almost serene, the stillness of a man who had already calculated every move 3 steps ahead. The countdown began. 5? The Vanquish's engines flared, eager and arrogant. 4. Snipes whispered, Commander, you're very calm. 3. I know, Banning said. 2. Moxie smirked. He's doing that scary thing again. 1. Aurora's eyes glowed. Race commencing! Go! The starting beacon detonated into a burst of light, and the ships launched forward like arrows released from a bow. The Vanquish surged ahead immediately, its engines screaming with overclocked power. The other ships followed, streaking into the warp corridor that opened like a shimmering tunnel of blue light. The Shadow Quest did not surge. It glided, smooth, controlled, effortless. Snipes blinked. Commander? We're not accelerating. We are, Banning said, just not visibly. Aurora nodded. The Shadow Quest's warp signature is masked. To outside sensors, we appear to be moving at suboptimal speed. Moxie grinned. Let them think we're slow. The ship slipped into the warp corridor, the stars stretching into luminous threads around them. The corridor pulsed with energy, a river of light flowing between systems. Snipes checked the sensors. The Vanquish is pulling ahead. They're already entering the Tyrellian system. Good, Banning said. Aurora flickered. The blood scythe is waiting in Castara. They will assume we are behind schedule. Snipes swallowed. And when they attack? Banning's voice was quiet, almost gentle. They won't be attacking us. The warp corridor spat the Shadow Quest into the Tyrellian system, a star field dominated by a massive blue sun whose corona rippled like a living flame. The system was dotted with crystalline asteroids that refracted the sunlight into shimmering beams. The Vanquish was already there, weaving between the asteroids with reckless confidence. Snipes frowned. They're showing off. Moxie smirked. Let them. Aurora's hologram brightened. Commander, the Vanquish is broadcasting a false distress signal. Snipes gasped. They're trying to lure us into a trap. No, Banning said. They're trying to lure us into a mistake. He adjusted the helm, guiding the Shadow Quest into a slow, deliberate arc around the asteroid field. Aurora nodded. We are maintaining distance. Their trap will fail. Moxie leaned back. They're going to get desperate. They already are, Banning said. As if on cue, the Vanquish fired a burst of ionized particles into the asteroid field. The crystalline asteroids refracted the blast, creating a dazzling but harmless light show. Snipes blinked. Was that supposed to do something? Aurora tilted her head. It was intended to blind our sensors. Moxie laughed. Cute. Banning didn't smile. They're testing us. They want to see if we panic. And we're not, Snipes said proudly. No, Banning said. We're not. The Shadow Quest slipped past the asteroid field, its engines whisper quiet. Aurora flickered. Entering the Kastara warp corridor. Snipes tensed. That's where the pirates are waiting. Moxie grinned. Let them wait. The warp corridor dissolved around the Shadow Quest in a ripple of blue light, revealing the Kastara system, a star field dominated by a swollen red giant whose surface churned like molten glass. The system's asteroid belt stretched across the void like a jagged scar, each rock glowing faintly from the star's heat. Aurora flickered above the hollow table. We have arrived in Kastara. The blood scythe is present. Snipes swallowed hard. Where? Aurora zoomed in on a cluster of asteroids. A massive, rust-colored vessel lurked in the shadows, its hull jagged, its engines pulsing like diseased organs. The skull-shaped prow glowed faintly, as if lit from within by something hungry. Moxie smirked. Subtle. Banning didn't look at the display. He kept his eyes on the viewport, hands resting lightly on the helm. They're waiting for us to pass through the asteroid belt, he said. They'll strike when we're boxed in. Snipes nodded nervously. Classic pirate tactic. Funnel the prey, then pounce. Aurora's eyes glowed. They are powering weapons. Their targeting systems are active. Moxie readied her firing controls. Let them try to fire, I'll destroy them. No, Banning said. Let them think they're firing. He tapped a control on the helm. The Shadow Quest shimmered, then split into 3 identical sensor signatures, each drifting toward the asteroid belt at slightly different vectors. Snipes gasped. Triple ghosting? Commander, that maneuver is illegal in 12 sectors. Good thing we're not in those sectors, Banning said. Aurora nodded. The blood scythe has locked onto the decoys. On the pirate ship, alarms blared as the crew scrambled to track the 3 signatures. Their captain, a scarred brute with a cybernetic jaw, barked orders. Target the center one! Fire all batteries! The blood scythe unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts, each one streaking through the void like a comet. The blasts tore through the center signature, which flickered, distorted, and dissolved into static. Snipes grinned. They hit a phantom. Moxie leaned forward. Now they're confused. Aurora's voice remained calm. They are recalibrating. They will fire again in 10 seconds. Banning nodded. Then we move in 9. The Shadow Quest glided silently through the asteroid belt, its gleaming golden hull shimmering beneath the glow of the red giant and dazzling against the shadowy rocks. Snipes whispered, Commander, we're threading a needle here. Yes, Banning said. Quietly. The blood scythe fired again, this time at the second decoy. Another hologram dissolved. The pirates roared in triumph. Got them! They're crippled! Aurora flickered. They are transmitting their victory to Tobias. Moxie laughed. They think they won! Banning's voice was soft. Good. The Shadow Quest slipped behind a massive asteroid, its engines dimming to a faint hum. Aurora whispered, They are preparing to close in for salvage. Snipes blinked. Salvage? They think we're debris? Yes, Banning said. And debris doesn't shoot back. He tapped a control. The Shadow Quest decloaked behind the blood scythe, silent, predatory, and perfectly positioned. Moxie's eyes gleamed. Commander, permission to fire? No, Banning said. Snipes blinked. No! Banning's voice was cold and precise. We're not here to destroy them. We're here to expose them. Aurora nodded. Recording is active. The Blood Scythe's captain opened a channel to Tobias. Target neutralized. Shadow Quest is dead in the water. Payment due. Tobias's voice crackled through the static. Excellent. Collect your salvage, then proceed to the Ionis Rift. We'll finish our transaction there. Aurora's eyes glowed. We have everything we need? Banning eased the helm forward. Then let's leave before they realize there's nothing to salvage. The Shadow Quest slipped back into the warp corridor, leaving the pirates celebrating a victory that never happened. The warp corridor unraveled around the Shadow Quest in a cascade of blue light, revealing the Ionis Rift, a vast expanse of swirling plasma storms and fractured nebulae that glowed like torn silk under a violet sun. The rift was beautiful in the way a hurricane was beautiful, mesmerizing, deadly, and indifferent to anything that drifted into its path. Aurora flickered above the holotable, her hologram tinted by the rift's eerie glow. We have entered the Ionis system. Plasma density is high. Electromagnetic interference is increasing. Snipes stared at the viewport, eyes wide. It looks like someone spilled a nebula and forgot to clean it up. Moxie smirked. Pretty. Dangerous. My kind of place. Banning stood at the helm, posture relaxed, hands steady. The rift's violent beauty reflected in his eyes, but his expression remained unreadable, the calm of a man who had already calculated every possible outcome. Aurora zoomed in on a cluster of drifting plasma clouds. The conspiring officers have realized we're still alive and have deployed false navigation beacons. They are broadcasting a fabricated safe corridor. Snipes frowned. And if we follow it? We die, Moxie said. Aurora nodded. Correct. The false corridor leads directly into a plasma shear capable of tearing a starship in half. Snipes swallowed. So, we don't follow it. No, Banning said. We let them think we are. Aurora's eyes glowed. Decoy signature deployed. On the Vanquish, alarms chimed as their sensors detected the Shadow Quest's warp signature drifting toward the false corridor. Commander Gordon leaned over the console. They're taking the bait. Tobias smirked. Of course they are. Banning's desperate. He'll cling to any route that looks safe. Quine laughed. He's flying straight into the plasma shear. Fillmore nodded. Once the ship is destroyed, we'll claim their navigation failed. No one will question it. Tobias clasped his hands behind his back. Excellent. Prepare the next phase. They didn't know Aurora was listening. Back aboard the Shadow Quest, the real ship drifted silently along the rift's outer edge, cloaked and invisible. The plasma storms crackled around them, casting rippling shadows across the hull. Snipes whispered, Commander! The decoy is approaching the shear. Good, Banning said. Aurora flickered. The Vanquish is transmitting a victory message on their private channel. Moxie leaned forward. Let me guess. They're bragging again. Aurora nodded. They are discussing the destruction of the Shadow Quest as an unfortunate accident. Snipes rolled his eyes. They're not even trying to hide it. No, Banning said. They think they've won. Aurora's voice softened. The plasma shear will destroy the decoy in 10 seconds. Banning nodded. Let it. The viewport lit up as the decoy signature drifted into the heart of the plasma shear. The rift erupted in a violent burst of light, a swirling vortex of energy that tore the holographic projection apart in a spectacular display. Snipes gasped. That looked real? That was the point, Banning said. Aurora flickered. The Vanquish is celebrating. Moxie smirked. Let them. Aurora continued. They are transmitting a message to the Blood Scythe. They believe the Shadow Quest has been destroyed. Snipes grinned. So the pirates think they won. The officers think they won. Everyone thinks we're dead. Banning's voice was quiet, almost gentle. Good. Aurora's eyes glowed brighter. Admiral Garrick has received the recordings. She is en route. Moxie's hand hovered over the firing sequence. Time to finish this. Not yet, Banning said. We need one more move. Snipes blinked. One more? Banning nodded. The final gambit. He guided the Shadow Quest toward the next warp corridor, the one leading to the Targus Expanse and the final leg of the race. Aurora dimmed the lights, preparing the ship for the transition. Moxie leaned back, a predatory smile on her face. Commander, what exactly are we about to do? Banning's expression didn't change. We're going to win the race, he said, and then we're going to take everything from them. The Shadow Quest slipped into the warp corridor, leaving the Ionis Rift and the officer's false victory behind. The warp corridor dissolved into darkness. Not the soft, star-speckled darkness of open space, but a heavy, suffocating void that swallowed light whole. The Targus Expanse was a region of collapsed nebula remnants and gravitational anomalies, a place where sensors faltered and navigation systems whispered lies. It was the perfect environment for a final gambit. The Shadow Quest emerged into the expanse like a ghost slipping through a curtain. Its golden hull absorbed what little light remained, rendering the ship nearly invisible against the stars. Aurora flickered above the holotable, her hologram tinted by the expanse's faint violet haze. We have entered the final system. The Vanquish is ahead by approximately 43 seconds. Snipes blinked. 43 seconds? That's not terrible. Moxie smirked. For them. Banning stood at the helm, posture relaxed, eyes fixed on the swirling distortions outside. The expanse warped the starlight into ribbons of color, twisting the void into a shifting maze. Aurora continued. The officers have deployed a final sabotage measure. They have seeded the expanse with gravitic mines. Snipes paled. Gravitic mines, the kind that implode ships from the inside. Yes, Aurora said. They are broadcasting a false safe corridor to lure us into the minefield. Moxie laughed. Let me guess. They think we're stupid enough to follow it. Banning's voice was quiet, almost gentle. They think we're dead. Aurora nodded. The Vanquish believes the Shadow Quest was destroyed in the Ionis Rift. They are broadcasting openly as an insurance policy. They do not know we are here. Snipes grinned. So they're bragging again. Aurora's eyes glowed. They are discussing the sale of the Shadow Quest's wreckage to the Syndicate. Moxie's expression darkened. They're vultures. No, Banning said. Vultures wait for something to die. These men try to kill it themselves. He tapped a control on the helm. The Shadow Quest shimmered, then vanished, cloaked, silent, predatory. Aurora dimmed the lights. Cloaking matrix stable. We are invisible to all known sensors. Snipes whispered. Commander, what's the plan? Banning's voice was calm, precise, and lethal. We're going to pass the Vanquish without them ever knowing we were here. Moxie raised an eyebrow. And then? Then, Banning said, we cross the finish line. The Shadow Quest drifted through the expanse like a shadow sliding across deeper shadow. Gravitic mines pulsed around them, spheres of warped space that bent the starlight into spirals. One wrong move would tear the ship apart. But Banning didn't hesitate. He guided the ship through the minefield with surgical precision, weaving between the distortions as if he could see the gravitational currents with his eyes alone. Snipes watched the readings, awestruck. Commander, how are you doing that? I'm listening, Banning said. To what? Snipes whispered. The ship. Aurora flickered. The Shadow Quest's hull is resonating with the gravitic distortions. Commander Banning is interpreting the vibrations. Moxie stared. He's flying by feel. Banning didn't respond. He didn't need to. The ship slipped past the last mine, emerging into a clearer stretch of the expanse. Aurora brightened. The Vanquish is directly ahead. They are preparing to exit the system. Snipes leaned forward. They're going to win. No, Banning said. They're going to think they won. He tapped another control. The Shadow Quest's engines flared, silently, invisibly, and the ship surged forward, still cloaked. They passed the Vanquish like a whisper. Aurora flickered. We are now ahead by 12 seconds. Moxie grinned. Commander, you magnificent bastard. Snipes laughed. We're ghosts. Banning didn't smile. Prepare for decloak. Aurora nodded. Finish line beacon detected. 30 seconds to arrival. The Shadow Quest streaked toward the beacon, a brilliant sphere of white light suspended above the Vega system. The warp corridor shimmered ahead, marking the final transition. Aurora counted down. 10 seconds. Snipes held his breath. 5. Moxie tightened her grip on the tactical controls. 3. The Vanquish burst from the warp corridor behind them, engines blazing. 2. Tobias's voice crackled over the comms. We did it! We... 1. The Shadow Quest decloaked. Directly in front of the finish line. The beacon flashed. The race was over. The Shadow Quest had won. The finish line beacon pulsed like a miniature star, its white light washing across the hull of the Shadow Quest as the ship drifted to a controlled stop. The engines cooled with a soft metallic sigh, the kind a predator makes after a successful hunt. The void around them was quiet. The kind of quiet that follows a decisive victory. Snipes exhaled so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. We did it. We actually did it. Moxie leaned back, arms crossed, a slow grin spreading across her face. We didn't just win. We humiliated and exposed them for who they are. Aurora flickered above the holotable, her hologram steady and bright. The Vanquish is approaching the finish line. They have not yet realized we are here. Banning stood at the helm, posture relaxed, hands clasped behind his back. His expression was unreadable, the calm of a man who had orchestrated every moment of the sting with surgical precision. Let them arrive, he said. Moments later, the Vanquish burst from the warp corridor, engines blazing, hull scorched from the expanse. Tobias's triumphant voice crackled over the comms before he even saw the Shadow Quest. Let's collect our winnings. Then he saw them. The Shadow Quest hovered directly in front of the beacon, golden hull gleaming like a nova carved into the void. Silent, still, victorious. Tobias's voice faltered. What? How? Aurora opened a channel. Commodore Tobias, congratulations on finishing the race. Moxie smirked. Second place is respectable. Snipes added, for amateurs. Tobias sputtered. This is impossible. You were destroyed. We saw... Banning stepped forward, his voice calm and cold. You saw what we wanted you to see. You fell for our bluff. Aurora projected a hologram between the two ships, a recording of the Blood Scythe's captain bragging about destroying the Shadow Quest, followed by Tobias's own voice ordering the sabotage. The Vanquish's bridge went silent. Then Admiral Garrick's voice cut through the comms like a blade. Commodore Tobias, Captain Quine, Commander Gordon, Lieutenant Fillmore, stand down immediately. The Vanquish jolted as Garrick's flagship, a massive dreadnought, emerged behind them, its hull bristling with weaponry and authority. Its presence dwarfed both ships, casting a long shadow across the finish line. Tobias paled. Admiral, this is a misunderstanding. No, Garrick said. This is treason. Aurora played the recordings again. Every word, every order, every admission of sabotage and conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, and damning. Garrick continued, You attempted to destroy a fleet vessel. You hired pirate mercenaries. You falsified navigation data. You conspired to sell classified technology to criminal syndicates. Quine tried to speak. Admiral, we— Silence, Garrick snapped. You will surrender your commands immediately. Security officers materialized on the Vanquish's bridge, weapons drawn. Tobias and his officers were placed in restraints, their faces pale and stunned. Snipes whispered, I almost feel bad for them. Moxie shook her head. I don't. Aurora dimmed her hologram. Admiral Garrick is requesting to speak with you, Commander. Banning nodded. Put her through. Garrick appeared on the holotable, her expression stern but not unkind. Commander Banning, you executed a sting operation without authorization. Yes, Admiral, Banning said. You risked your ship, your crew, and your lives. Yes, Admiral. You manipulated fleet officers into exposing their crimes. Yes, Admiral. Garrick's stern expression softened, just slightly. And you succeeded? Snipes grinned. Moxie smirked. Aurora brightened. Garrick continued. The Shadow Quest remains under your command, effective immediately. Banning nodded. Understood. But hear me clearly, Garrick said, leaning forward. If you ever wager your ship again, in any game, under any circumstances, I will personally drag you to the brig kicking and screaming. Banning's expression didn't change. Understood. Garrick nodded once. Good work, Commander. Garrick out. The channel closed. Snipes collapsed into his chair. I'm exhausted. Moxie smirked. Why? You didn't do anything. Snipes gasped. I emotionally supported the operation. Aurora flickered. Snipes did contribute significantly. Snipes pointed at her. Thank you, Aurora. Banning turned toward the viewport, watching the stars drift past like silent witnesses. We're done here, he said. Set a course. Moxie asked, Where to? Banning's voice was calm, confident, and dangerous. Anywhere we want. The Shadow Quest's engines flared, and the ship leapt into warp, streaking into the stars, victorious, unstoppable, and with a crew more united than ever. End of episode 100. A milestone event. The missions of the Shadow Quest, the Ship of Fools, will continue.